Good afternoon. I'm the Reverend Chris Hockman, so privileged to serve as the minister of this congregation. And I welcome you all to this time and place made sacred by the presence of all here today, where we gather to celebrate the life of Austin Miller Case, with joy and in gratitude, with sadness and in grief. It is our tradition in Unitarian Universalism to mark our sacred times together with the lighting of a chalice and words of invocation. We light this flame as our fervent plea to brighten the dark corners of our hearts. We hold this flame, for in it is the promise of warmth for souls grown cold in loss and despair. We kindle this light that we might continue to find comfort in its warmth, strength in its light, holiness in its presence. We follow this light that it might illuminate our search for purpose, for meaning and forgiveness. We light this chalice, knowing even as this sacred spark of life is extinguished, in the ensuing darkness, its light and Austin's light will still burn bright with memory and hope. We light this flame of life, of love and truth, for the divine promise of healing hearts. Now I will light our special candle of memory and hope, which represents the light Austin brought to the lives of so many. May its flame remind us of both our gratitude for life and the transience of it. May we all live the rest of our days knowing life's preciousness. In this time together, may we remember Austin. May we find strength in our faith and in each other, and may we be reverent witnesses to the life that he led. Please rise in body or spirit to sing hymn number 347 in the gray hymnal. The words will also be on the screen. Gather the Spirit. We come into this time with a range of emotions, and this is a place where it is welcome to express them through tears, laughter, and words of remembrance. For this is a place where we hold both the joy of love and the pain of loss, all of which we will navigate together. Our grief is a holy thing. It is proof that another life touched ours in a profound way. It is the mark of love, the mark of connection, and the mark of a life well lived. Sometimes, through the overwhelm of grief and loss, we cannot find words to express the emotions, the depths of the pain and longing in our hearts. When words are difficult to find, I often look to the poets, those who are gifted with the ability to crystallize and distill complex and wide-ranging feelings into this beautiful economy of words that make us respond, why, yes, that's how it feels. In that spirit, I would like to share a poem from John O'Donohue called For Grief. When you lose someone you love, your life becomes strange. The ground beneath you gets fragile. Your thoughts make your eyes unsure, and some dead echo drags your voice down where words have no confidence. Your heart has grown heavy with loss, and though this loss has wounded others too, no one knows what has been taken from you when the silence of absence deepens. Flickers of guilt kindle regret for all that was left unsaid or undone. There are days when you wake up happy, again inside the fullness of life, until the moment breaks and you are thrown back onto the black tide of loss. Days when you have your heart break. You are able to function well until the middle of work or encounter. Suddenly, with no warning, you are ambushed by grief. It becomes hard to trust yourself. All you can depend on now is that sorrow will remain faithful to itself. More than you, it knows its way and will find the right time to pull and pull the rope of grief until that coiled hill of tears has reduced to its last drop. Gradually, you will learn acquaintance with the invisible form of your departed, and when the work of grief is done, the wound of loss will heal, and you will have learned to wean your eyes from that gap in the air and be able to enter the hearth in your soul where your loved one has awaited your return all the time. Please rise in body or spirit to sing hymn number 35, Unto Thy Temple, Lord, We Come.
Good afternoon. My name is Shirley Phillips. I'd like to thank you all for coming to show your respects and to remember our dear friend Austin. Austin's career was very important to him, and I'm going to talk about his work with me. We worked together at Department of Social Services in Greenville for 30 years, and that's how I met Austin. We met when he joined us in the foster care and the daycare unit, and we had 4 female workers in our office. We had 2 telephones, and everybody had a desk, and that was about it. So Austin came in, and he did not seem at all intimidated by being in with 4 females, because it got crazy at times. But he just took it in stride. He was just such an easygoing person, just even-tempered, never any problems, never any issues. We all had a very heavy caseload of 75 to 100 children, and we had to see them once a month. And we also had to keep up with their issues, maybe school issues, issues in the foster homes. Austin just meshed into our little group, and we all became very good friends, and we're all still friends to this day. Austin was a highly skilled social worker. He was intelligent, he was reliable, he was conscientious. He had a very good understanding of foster care and how the children being removed from their homes affected them. He showed so much empathy and understanding and compassion. He was an excellent role model and a great mentor for these children. We laughed because the children always looked forward to having a visit from Mr. Case. Austin worked along with the foster children. We all worked with the school system, with the pediatric clinic, with family court, with attorneys, teachers, natural parents, and foster parents. So it was a tough job, but we all chipped in and helped each other, and you never had a problem that Austin didn't want to help with. Austin also certified clients for food stamps. Then before his retirement, he went to work with the Adult Protective Services Unit. These were DSS clients who had no one else to care for them. A lot of times all their families were deceased, or they maybe had someone far away that couldn't help them. Austin always looked after them. He tried to find the resources that they needed. Just simple things such as food, shelter, clothing, doctor's visits, doctor's appointments, transportation. And again, we will never know the impact that Austin had on either the foster children or on the adult services population. Austin loved working at DSS. He felt that was his calling, and I truly believe it was. He was just a born helper. Now I'm going to go back and tell you a little bit about my relationship with Austin. When we worked at DSS, one of the 4 ladies that worked with us found another job. And so we had a new person to come in to work with us named Suzanne Jackson. A very pretty young girl named Suzanne Jackson. Well, after a couple of weeks, we noticed that Austin had a totally different demeanor about him. He had been taking Suzanne Jackson out to show the ropes about doing home visits, and we did this for each other. When a new person would come in, we would show them, what we did on a home visit, how we dealt with foster parents. So anyway, we kept talking among ourselves about Austin just seems a little bit different. Well, a few weeks later, Austin and Suzanne admitted to us that they had been dating. 6 months later, they were married. Austin was absolutely smitten with Suzanne, and I've told her this many times. He was absolutely, he adored her. And they were married. When Austin passed away, they had been married 47 and a half years. And I don't think Austin could have chosen a better mate than Suzanne. You have been wonderful to Austin. You have been his rock, and you were wonderful in helping him through his illnesses. And I don't think that Suzanne could have better chosen anyone, because I think Austin was perfect for you. And I want to thank you for everything you did for Austin. You were a wonderful wife. And Austin also loved Oliver. They had Oliver 1, and this is Oliver 2. And Austin loved animals, and I know that Oliver misses Austin. I also want to thank Ginger, Austin's sister, because Suzanne told me how much help Ginger was to her through Austin's illness. Austin was a dear, dear friend to me for over 50 years. We shared many, many happy times together, and it was an honor to be his friend. He was such a good man. He helped anybody who needed help. He was just always there. During his illness, I never heard him once complain. He accepted what happened, and he made the best of it. He tried to get help. He went through chemo. He went through radiation, and he did everything he could do to get better. I would be remiss not to mention Austin's favorite hobby, and it was working on cars. He was an excellent mechanic. He had an old Chrysler that he worked on, an old green Chrysler, and he babied that car and took care of that car for years. I can still see him driving up in that car now and checking the oil or checking the tires. I will never forget Austin because of his kindness to everybody. He had a beautiful smile. His friendship meant more to me than he could have ever known. I had asked Suzanne the first of the week if I could put a notice on Facebook that we would be remembering Austin today. And over 20 people sent me messages about how sorry they were to hear about Austin, and also to tell me, and the big word that they used, the familiar word, was kind. Everybody talked about what a kind person Austin was, what a good worker he was, and what a good person he was. I will never forget Austin's friendship to me. Austin fought the good fight, and he kept the faith until the very end. Suzanne was good enough to let me come and see Austin the weekend before he passed away. And I will never forget that visit, and I'm so thankful that I was able to go and share a few words with Austin. I'll never forget the memories of our friendship, the funny things we did together, the happy times we had with Austin and also with Suzanne. It was an honor and a privilege to know Austin. I'm so thankful that I was his friend. I always told Austin he was my good buddy at work, and he was. I would like to read this poem. Your minister mentioned A Life Well Lived, and this is one of my favorite poems, and I feel like it describes Austin perfectly. A life well lived is a precious gift of hope and strength and grace for someone who has made our world a brighter, better place. It's filled with moments sweet and sad, with smiles and sometimes tears, with friendships formed and good times shared, and laughter through the years. A life well lived is a legacy of joy and pride and pleasure, a living, lasting memory our grateful hearts will treasure. Rest in peace, my good buddy. I love you, and I was honored to be your friend. Thank you.
As with Shirley, Austin and I were friends for an awful long time, 48 years to be exact. We met at Department of Social Services back in 1976, where Shirley also worked. I'm trying to understand why he became such a good friend 48 years ago. I mean, of course, I've been with him for 48 years, so I know very well now why he was such a good friend. But I think in the beginning, I was attracted to something very distinctive about Austin. For those of you who know Austin well, you would agree that there is no one on this planet, even remotely, like Austin. He was one of a kind. I think it was his wit. He was a very funny man, made me laugh an awful lot. He was obviously very intelligent, as all of you know who have spent time with him. And he had a really unique and unpredictable take on pretty much any subject that we would talk about. One of the favorite topics would be what we did together at the Department of Social Services and the people that we worked with. Also, I think the other reason that I was attracted to him right away is that I had just moved to the South, and I think I was suffering some culture shock. And Austin had a most distinct Yankee accent. And having just arrived in the South, I think I took a lot of comfort in hearing that Yankee accent. And to his credit, 48 years later, right up until his death, he never lost his Yankee accent one bit. So anyway, we became friends, we decided to socialize, and we made arrangements to have our wives join us as a foursome. And I don't have any recall of our very first time together, but it must have gone really well because we continued getting together regularly for 48 years. We would exchange homes. We'd go to one home once and the other home the other time. We became best of friends and have remained best of friends right to the end. And this will continue here with Suzanne going forward. In recent years, with Austin battling some serious health concerns, Suzanne would take the bulk of the conversation when we'd go visit. But it wasn't always that way. In the early years, Austin had passions, and he would love to describe them and discuss them. If he became interested in something, he would be all in. And of course, the example that readily comes to mind is what Shirley has already talked about, his love of cars. His particular love was antique cars. And I would play a little game with him in which I would just randomly come up with some old car and ask him to tell me whatever he knew about it. And he always knew way, way more about any given car than I cared to hear about. He would talk not only about the usual body and engine issues of a car, but he talked about the origin story of the car, what distinguished it from similar cars, how it was marketed, whether it was a commercial success, what unique features it had. I mean, he would go on and on and on. I would listen amazed at the extent of his knowledge. He would just go on in exhausting detail, quite frankly, about his knowledge of cars. I had originally written ad nauseum, but I felt that wasn't appropriate in a eulogy. But he loved his cars, but it wasn't only cars. He was a voracious reader. He was always reading a book. One example that I remember, and he would discuss whatever it was he was reading, and he would always be so involved in what he was reading. The one example that I remembered was that he gave me a detailed dissertation about the rise and fall of obscure political empires that existed and thrived at various points in history, only to disappear. It was a book that he was reading, and he got totally involved in it and started researching other sources. And I just remember sitting and listening to him go on and on about this. And I often wondered how he could assimilate complex subjects so quickly and thoroughly, and then expound on them with the confidence of a master storyteller. It was a real skill that he had. One of Austin's most endearing qualities, to me anyway, was his grumpiness. He turned irritability into an art form. And he was never more entertaining and delightful than when he was describing the things that irked him. And the thing about Austin, he lacked the capacity to be disingenuous or to mask his feelings. So if he was irritated, there was no mistaking it. But here's the thing, Austin's transparency worked both ways. He showed his goodwill and affection with every fiber of his being, if he was your friend or if he thought highly of you. He had a childlike enthusiasm in the way he conveyed his delight. He could take what might seem to most of us mundane and turn it into something really magical, just by his spirit, his delightful, childlike spirit. The real focus of his life? Perfect. Thank you. The real focus of his life, where his heart and passion lied, was his love and devotion to his wife of 47 years, Suzanne. I have never known a man so devoted to the love and care of a woman as he was to Suzanne. His devotion to her and his gratitude for her love and care was always front and center. And I want to mirror what Shirley said. The care that Suzanne gave Austin during those last few years of his life was nothing short of heroic. The amount of care that he needed towards the end was staggering, and Suzanne was right there every step of the way. The last time I saw him was just several days before he died. Hospice had set up a bed in the living room of their home, and I had offered to come and sit with him for a while so that Suzanne could get a much-needed break and go out for a nice extended lunch with a couple of her friends. It was really hard, though, for me to see him in the condition that he was in. He had a hollow, distant look in his eyes. He was emaciated, despondent, withdrawn. The TV was set to the Weather Channel, but he had it on mute. In the 2 hours that I sat with him, I never saw him glance at the TV. Shortly after taking a seat next to his bed, he said something to me that I couldn't make out. And so I asked him to repeat it, and he said in a barely audible, apologetic tone that he didn't feel up to a conversation. He kept his eyes open during my visit, but he seemed distant, mindlessly fiddling and rearranging items that he had on the bed tray before him. Finally, the back door opened, and Suzanne announced her return. And what happened next, I will never forget. His expression became instantly animated. His eyes opened widely, and he flashed a euphoric smile. His whole face was transformed into a joyful expression, and he was able to muster a clearly audible and enthusiastic "Welcome home." I was stunned at how it revived him and how transformed he was. I was so stunned that I couldn't leave without taking Suzanne to the side and just sharing with her what I had just witnessed, and it's something that I'll never forget. Something about the power of love, being able to transform suffering into joy just instantly like that. Austin showed me consistently for over 40 years the purity of his heart, his kindness. It's a word you're going to hear a lot about Austin. He was just such a gentle, kind person. And he had a steadfast commitment to our friendship for 40 years. And he's been a huge part of my life. And I'm going to miss him. Thank you.
Hello, it's nice to see all you here to honor Austin. When I first said something about celebration of life to Suzanne, she said, "I think it should be celebration of Austin." She said his life wasn't so good this last few years, and he did have a rough road to go. I'm Pat, and we bonded. I can't say much about anything about knowing him in the beginning or the middle of his life, but I knew about the end of his life. We bonded because I've been friends with Suzanne a long time, and I knew Austin, but I had the same surgery he had. So prior to his bladder cancer and the surgery that ensued after that, he wanted to speak with me, or Suzanne asked for me to. I don't know how much Austin wanted to, but we met, and I told him I did very well. It's nothing to be afraid of. But I was lucky. Austin had all the complications I didn't have, and he suffered like I didn't suffer. I wish I could have taken some from him. So when he got so sick, I was gone for a while, and when I came back, he'd already suffered so much and nearly died. In fact, I think he did die and was brought back. And so when it came the time for him to be housebound, and Suzanne was working so hard to take care of him, as she had all the years he's been suffering off and on with cancer since the 80s, I took it upon myself to impose myself on them. They didn't want any help. They could manage on their own. I found over the time I was with them, they don't like to ask for help. They're very private, and they loved each other dearly, and that's what they needed. But I knew from experience as a nurse, and as for having taken care of my own ill husband, and for having to know what I had to go through, even though my my journey was much easier. It was nothing like his journey. I knew what it entailed in getting used to those things. So I just showed up. I just stood on the doorstep. I lived close by. And I said, listen, I'm just going to stop by and see if you need anything. And if you want to, I'll come in. If you don't, I'm just going to stop by anyway. And so Suzanne knows me well enough to know how stubborn I am, and I guess she decided not to argue with me. So I would do that. I would just stop by to see if they needed help. And I'd say, Avon calling. The Avon lady's here again. What do you need? What do you want? And usually they just ask me in, or it would be a time where really just need some quiet time. So I got to know Austin at the end of his life. And I can reiterate what everyone has said about how kind and genuine a person he was. I would say that he was a gentle gentleman. He knew his please and thank yous. He was always polite. I never heard him not thank you for something. If he wanted something, it was please. He had his irritable times too, but I never saw many. And that was only when he was not thinking straight, as you get when you get so sick. But for me, it was a blessing for me to be able to help the little bit that I did. But he was reluctant to ask for anything. He did not want me to have to help him when he was weak and couldn't do it for himself. I finally had to say, Austin, I do this for me. I can do it for you. I've done it for other people. Why not for a friend? So he would let me help him. And he said, this is so hard for Suzanne. I said, yes, it is. Because Suzanne took his care 24/7. I don't know how she did it. She was 1,000,000 times the nurse I ever was. She took care of that man with no nursing training, and yet she gave so much love to him and so much meaning to his life that it was more than I've seen anyone do. They were fighters. Austin was not going to die. He'd made up his mind. He wouldn't talk about it. He didn't want you to mention it. He didn't want to prepare for it. He was going to beat this thing, and they both were. The only thing was, to me, it was like two soldiers on a battlefield, one hurt and the other one holding him up. And they were both struggling to get through that carnage to a peaceful time where they could enjoy life together. Their arms wound around each other, just holding each other up. They were that big a part of each other's lives. And Austin said, Suzanne's my rock, like the other young lady said. Yeah, she was his rock, and he was not going to leave her. He'd beat cancer before, he'd do it now. So when he had to go to hospice for a while, he actually perked up when he got there. He was more lucid, and he said, I want to go home. I have to go home. And it was hard because Suzanne was going to Anderson for hours every day to be with him. But it gave her a little bit of a respite, which she didn't take any other time. And so she made it her project to get him home. So she made sure that he did get home where he wanted to be. And when he was there, he made more sense. He was engaged with life again. He could see out the sliding glass doors at his beautiful flowers that he loved, at the yard and the birds. The light came in. So during that time, he has had some good days too. And I remember one day that he was feeling himself, and he was teasing Suzanne. He had such a dry sense of humor. And they were teasing back and forth. It was wonderful to see him that way. So Suzanne made that possible for him to get home and to pass away with his beloved Oliver standing guard and being with him. I I know I'm rambling. I was trying to think of the best things to tell you about him because he was so special. He said Suzanne was a part of him. And as she says, she feels like she's lost her best friend and a part of her. And that void will be there. But hopefully, like Reverend Chris said too, with the poem, it will be filled eventually with those good memories of the good times that they had and the love they had for each other, because that's what kept him going. I even did something one time, I don't think I ever told Suzanne this, there towards the last, when he was suffering so, and he didn't speak much. I said, Austin, I know you're worried about Suzanne. I said, but she's strong. She's stronger than she knows it. She has gathered up all those reserves of strength, and there's still some more in her. Don't worry about her if you have to go. I said, she's got family and friends who love her and will stand by her. You don't have to worry about her. I know that you're tired. I didn't say you can leave if you want to, but I insinuated that, and I'll never forget the look on his face. His lips set, he gave me a sidelong glance, as if to say, don't talk to me like that. I'm not going anywhere. And that's exactly what he said. I'm going to beat this thing. So that last night I was with Suzanne and him, the night that he passed away early that morning. We sat up with him all night, and Suzanne, of course, was telling how much she loved him. And I had to leave early for an appointment. I had at 5:30 in the morning with my daughter-in-law. I had to Zoom with her in Germany. I hated to leave because I knew it was a bad night and I knew it was time. But I had to do that. So I left her for that time. And I had not been gone long when he passed away. Suzanne had said earlier when we were talking, she said that she had read somewhere that people passed away the way it was most comfortable to them, either with their friends and family surrounding them or with a loved one by themselves. So when I left, not long after I left, he passed away. And I think he wanted to be with the love of his life and to have those last moments with her. So it's a love story, and it continues, even though his body got tired, because he never gave up. I mean, you could call him the wounded warrior. I've never seen a man fight so hard to stay with Suzanne, and for a wife to fight so hard to have him stay with her. She was there every minute, and I have to admire her for that. And I hope that the memories will comfort her, the good memories, because there were many, even though right now it probably doesn't seem like there's anything but a big void to fill. But Austin, you were special. I was honored to be able to help a little bit that I could. I was honored to be able to see a woman stand by her man. When he said he was going to live, she'd say, you know, Pat, did we do everything we could? Maybe I should have done this, or maybe we should have gone to do that. I think he's getting better. There's always that hope and that desire and that purpose of love to support the man that you're with your love, and she did. So we'll miss Austin, but he blessed many people from what you've heard from his earlier life, and I know from the end of the life he blessed me and all of those of us who know Suzanne and who knew Austin. And I'm thankful for that time with him. So I hope that he rests in peace. I know that his tortured and tired body is gone, that shell is gone, but I feel like his spirit lives on. And I know that he's looking after Suzanne and saying, sweetie, I'm with you. I'm with you every bit of the way, you and Oliver. So thank you for letting me tell you about my journey with Austin at the end of his life, which I was so privileged to be there for him and for Suzanne. Thank you. Blessed be.
This poem is in honor of Austin's commitment to peacemaking. Making Peace by Denise Levertov. A voice from the dark called out, "The poets must give us imagination of peace to oust the intense, familiar imagination of disaster. Peace, not only the absence of war." But peace, like a poem, is not there ahead of itself, can't be imagined before it is made, can't be known except in the words of its making, grammar of justice, syntax of mutual aid. A feeling towards it, dimly sensing a rhythm, is all we have until we begin to utter its metaphors, learning them as we speak. A line of peace might appear if we restructured the sentence our lives are making, revoked its reaffirmation of profit and power, questioned our needs, allowed long pauses. A cadence of peace might balance its weight on that different fulcrum. Peace, a presence, an energy field more intense than war, might pulse then, stanza by stanza into the world, each act of living one of its words, each word a vibration of light, facets of the forming crystal. Please rise and body your spirit. Let's sing. You may be seated. Our grief is a holy thing. It is proof that another life touched ours in a profound way. It is the mark of love, the mark of connection, and the mark of a life well lived. We will mourn, we will cry, we will miss Austin. Time will move on, and we may not hurt like we hurt now, but then a thought or a bit of music or a scent will remind us of him, and it will all come back. Those moments, too, are holy. They're reminders of that connection that will never go away. It's important to hold on to that connection because it is through those memories that Austin stays with us. And our memories of him and the love and connection stay alive, and with it, a part of Austin lives on. Hold on to your memories of Austin. Tell the stories that make you smile, the stories that make you laugh. Share the memories with people who knew him and people who did not. May they remind you of the beauty of Austin's life, of his passions, his contributions, and his love. And may it bring you peace on this day. Amen. Dear ones, go in peace and blessed be.